What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well. Today is very exciting because the folks over at Phanteks have just released two brand new cases. They are the Evolv Shift and Shift X. I'm going to be building my new HTPC inside of the Shift today. It's actually the shorter of the two cases, doesn't have quite as much liquid cooling support, but still one hell of a case as we're about to see. So yes, I will be using this case for my upgraded home theater PC that we will be building today. This is the current home theater PC that Wifey Sauce and I have been using for the last 6 or 7 years now. Granted, we made a couple hardware upgrades along the way. For example, we now have a Sapphire Radeon R9 285 in here. It's nothing super current, but definitely not 6 or 7 years old. The original CPU is still mounted, however. We've got a Core i5 3570K Ivy Bridge quad-core processor, no hyper-threading. So it's not a slow PC, but it's definitely not rocking like current-gen modern parts. So this will be a pretty fat upgrade, to say the least. In case you guys were wondering about the chassis, this is the Silverstone SG05, a fantastic mini ITX case that really just boils down all the parts to pretty much as small of a footprint as you can probably get, even by today's standards. So outstanding case, but it is time to move on to the Evolv Shift, and we'll be talking more about this case, of course, throughout the rest of this video. But first, the rest of the parts that we're using for our upgraded home theater PC. My CPU of choice is the Core i5 7600K Kaby Lake processor from Intel. It's got 4 cores, no hyper-threading, but that's totally fine. This is more than enough for what I need it for. Don't worry, no one stole the CPU. It's just I took it out of the box a while ago. But it's a fantastic CPU. The reason why I'm going Intel for this build and not Ryzen, for example, is first of all, I don't need more than 4 cores for what I'm going to be using this system for, which is mainly light web browsing and streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, things like that. Additionally, there aren't many fantastic mini ITX AM4 boards out right now. I mean, there's the BioStar one that I've already used in my Go Anywhere Do Anything PC, but it doesn't have Wi-Fi. I really wanted Wi-Fi for the upgraded home theater PC because we've got Wi-Fi on the existing one. It wouldn't be much of an upgrade if we remove that. So until those new boards roll out, we're going Intel. It's going to be more than enough, again, for what I'm using this system for. That being said, we've got a pretty sweet motherboard here. This is the Asus ROG Strix Z270i Gaming. That's a mouthful. A fantastic board. I've actually used this before in the Ncase M1 build that I did back in the day. If you guys want to go ahead and check that out. It's a great board. It's got Wi-Fi on it, M.2 NVMe support, and all that jazz. It's beautiful. It's one of the nicest looking Z270 boards at this form factor, in my opinion. So it's going to be fantastic looking in this build. Also, we've got kind of a gray anodized aluminum panels on the front and back of the Shift, so I think that's going to match really nicely with the board, which you will be able to see through the double tempered glass side panels on that case. Pairing nicely with an H80 IV2. That's of course going to be our liquid AIO for our 7600K. This is from Corsair. It does have fans on either side of it. It's a 120 rad. I'm very curious to see if we're going to be able to fit both of those fans with this thicker radiator inside of the Evolv Shift. We're going to have to see. I've got some other backup AIOs in case that doesn't work though. Not to mention the gray fan blades and accents on the cooler itself are going to match pretty nicely with the rest of our system, including this Dominator Platinum kit, 16 gigabytes, 2x8 gig sticks. This is a 3200 kit, but I don't think we need it to go that fast, so we're actually going to be using these sticks, which are rated at 3000 megahertz. Thank you very much, autofocus. Pulling out all the stops for our video card, I've got the EVGA GTX 1080 Ti for the win. 3 because we can. This is not required or necessary at all. This is totally overkill for what we're going to be building today, but it's fun. We can do it. We're doing it because we can, folks. This is a fully air-cooled triple fan design from EVGA, ICX of course. Get that all those thermal sensors in there. This is going to be a total beast of a card. It is fairly large for an add-in board partner 1080 Ti, so this is one of those things that we're going to see. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that it actually fits inside of this case. If not, I've got other cards for backup, but that should be pretty cool. I believe there's 2 8-pin PCIe connectors for power on here, so we're going to need a pretty hefty power supply to handle that, such as this 500-watt SFX-L unit from Silverstone. I've had this unit for a while. It's 80 plus gold, fully modular. It's fantastic. All the cables that it comes with are flat black, so it should match really nicely as well, and very reliable. Have not had any issues in my past experience with that unit. I should also mention that the Evolv Shift that we're talking about here only supports SFX and SFX-L units. You'll have to upgrade to the Shift X if you want that full ATX PSU support. One of our last parts before we move on to the case itself is this Patriot Hellfire M.2 SSD. I actually dug this out of an older PC of the month inside of the N3 Pro, which is also a Phanteks case. I totally overlooked the fact that I had left this SSD just rotting away in the motherboard there in the little M.2 slot. But here it is, a 480 gig capacity drive, super fast. So thank you very much, Patriot, for sponsoring this drive way back when so that we can use it again today. And now, last but not least, our case of the hour, the Evolv Shift from Phanteks. The anodized aluminum panels look really sweet. They are super high quality, nice finish, and no sharp edges or anything like that at all. This is, again, the gray version. It does come in black as well. Just gives it a really nice stealthy look if you go that route. Same with the Shift X, you can get it in either these gray or black panels. Dual tempered glass again on either side, very high quality looking. It looks like they've got a slight tint to them. Front I/O, you've pretty much just got these two USB 3.0 ports hovering at the back here. I think Phanteks decided to put them back there just to tidy up the front look. The appearance is much more minimalistic with the ports out of the way, but they're still side mounted, so it should be fairly easy to reach back there and pop in a flash drive should you need to. And then you've also got some nice ventilation at the front and back, so you can see the side ventilation, pretty generous, pretty good ventilation at the top as well. I should also mention that this case can be mounted either vertically or horizontally, so you can actually lay it completely on its side if that's the way you want to go. Gives you some flexibility when deciding where to put this in the living room or wherever. And I'm almost positive that you'll be able to move these little feet should you decide to orient the case on its side. Additionally, we've got a nice looking top here, very, very sexy, kind of a big metal grill. It looks like there's a power button right here, and this looks to be, I thought it was a reset button at first, but after looking at the spec sheet, I think it's an RGB button actually. We'll test it out later, but there's an RGB LED right here, or a little strip right there, which does sync up with Phanteks compatible LED strips and the RGB LEDs on your motherboard, for example, and that can all be controlled and configured in programs like Asus Aura. To pop this guy open, you just simply apply some pressure and it lifts up like so. Get an accessory box right here, very easy access for when you first receive your case. Everything's good to go right there. I want to give you guys a look at the back side of the case so you can see where the cables get routed out of. So there's a cable routing hole right up here. You can route to your keyboard, your mouse, monitors, etc. That could all be routed out of this hole right here, or even out of the bottom of the case. Phanteks gives you the option to route either or a combination of both if you really want to. This is also where your AC power cord plugs into. Additionally, I should have also mentioned that instead of using these USB 3 ports at the back, if they're too cumbersome or whatever, or hard to get to, you could probably just pop this open, the top panel, which gives you access to where your rear I/O would be. Technically, it's now your top I/O based on how the internal layout works in this case. So you could, if you wanted to, just pop in a USB flash drive straight from the top, assuming that it's short enough to not interfere with this top grill. So there's a quick rundown of the case's exterior. Let's go ahead and start building though. That way I can give you guys an idea of what it's like to build inside of the chassis, and of course take a closer look at the internal layout. So got my screwdriver all handy, let's get to building my new home theater PC. All right, so the first thing we want to do here is take off these side panels, all 4 side panels, so we can actually start installing things in the case. The way we're going to do that is we're going to press down on this top panel so that it lifts up like so, as I demonstrated earlier. So it looks like each panel has 2 thumb screws a piece. So I'm going to go ahead and start uninstalling the right side panel. It looks like they are captive, which is really nice because you don't want to drop a screw inside of the case and completely lose it. So those are loosened. I think the way to do this is you lift it. Aha! You just kind of lift it up like that. Beautiful. That came off really easy. Next up, we got this sucker. Aha! Now it looks like the thumb screws for the front and back panels are actually mounted sideways as opposed to top down, which is kind of interesting. So as long as you don't have super fatty fingers, you should be able to get in there. Fortunately, I'm able to unscrew these no problem straight from the factory. Usually for first time use, you still have to use a screwdriver on thumb screws because they're just tightened too tight when they leave the factory. But this looks like it should be just fine. I believe this pops off just the same way as the tempered glass panels do. And our last panel should come off just like so. All right, so the great thing about this design is that it sort of offers you this 360-degree view of your open chassis. So it's going to be really easy to just attack this from any angle, from any side, and that's going to help the build go along quite smoothly. So that's really nice. I'm just going to leave off the side panels for now. There was something that I wanted to mention about them though. The front and back panels, the aluminum ones, actually have removable dust filters. That side dust filtration that I showed you guys earlier, those are actually removable filters. Looks like they just pop out like so. You can run them under like a water faucet, or just, you know, use a can of compressed air or something like that to clean them off maybe once a month or so, and then pop them back right in. They are plastic. They look kind of flimsy, but you know, fortunately you don't have to handle them too often, so they should be fine. But it's nice that there's a removable dust filtration system here. Now that you guys have a better look of the inside of the case, you might notice that it comes included with a 140mm fan at the front. This is the only included fan with the case, and it's positioned again at the front right next to the motherboard and where your graphics card would be mounted on the other side. There are additional mounting points for a 120 or 140 just below the first fan, and same mounting options at the very bottom of the case. This is also where you would mount your 120mm rads, either right here at the front bottom or at the very bottom of the case. You can, again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but you can mount both of them simultaneously, but that will limit your radiator thickness to 27mm on those rads, so bear that in mind. All right, let's go ahead and install our motherboard now, which you can see here I've already mounted the CPU water block of our AIO onto the board itself. Of course, we'll need to mount that little pesky IO shield first. Now you gotta remember that the IO is gonna be facing the top of your case. It's gonna be facing up, so it's gonna mount in something like that. So we're gonna want to make sure that we install our IO shield correctly. It looks like that IO shield is in. We can go ahead and mount the motherboard to the 4 pre-installed standoffs. So you'll notice that the two on the bottom, the 2 standoffs on the bottom, actually have a little lip, a little collar, just to help you situate the board so that it just sort of rests on easy. You also got to be mindful of the PCIe riser. It is sort of in the way, so you got to just hold it out like so before you mount, as you mount the motherboard in there. So. There we go, motherboard installed. There's actually a cable management area right here. You can see there's a little fold down door to conceal some of it. Keeps it looking nice and tidy. So I'm gonna fold this little cable management door down. It's magnetic. You can see we've got some front panel connectors here tied down with an included Velcro strap. Let's go ahead and plug in our USB 3 and front panel connectors. So here's a front angled view. I've just sort of started routing some of the front panel connectors, like our USB 3, our power switch, etc. I've also wired up the front fan. I actually wired it, I ran the cable through this channel here, which gets covered up really nicely with that magnetic door, and then I passed it through the left side, or the back side I should say, of the case, because this is where all of the excess cabling technically goes, is underneath the front and rear panels. And Phanteks has done a real nice job of including plenty of Velcro straps to hold those cables down so that you can fit those side panels on pretty easily, and does a really nice job of concealing them as well. Pretty much this is all the cabling that I think I can do for now. I guess I could pass the 4-pin fan connectors coming off of the CPU AIO water block through the rubber grommets. There's actually 2 rubber grommets in this hidden cable channel here, so that's really nice. Now, since our Patriot Hellfire is the only drive we'll be putting in today's system, we won't really be utilizing any of the other storage options in this case, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about them. So first off, we've got 2 removable mounts right here. These are 2 trays, 2.5-inch trays, so you can put a pair of SSDs here. They're removable and they come off, they basically mount to these little rubber washers, so it's toolless. You technically have to use a screwdriver and physically mount the SSD to the tray, but once it's mounted to the tray, it just kind of pops onto these rubber washers here. We've seen this design in other cases from Phanteks and other manufacturers in the past, so that's really convenient. On the opposite side of this wall, where most of your cable routing goes, all the excess cabling and cable management, you've also got a single mount for a 3.5-inch drive, or if you wanted to, you could take one of these removable 2.5-inch trays and move it to the opposite side, assuming you're not going to be installing a 3.5-inch drive. I think that's a pretty fair number, pretty fair storage options for a case of this size and form factor. We've also got this PCIe ribbon cable that sort of leads to the opposite side of the case. telling us that this is really divided into two chambers, more or less. The side that you're seeing now with the motherboard and CPU and memory, and then the opposite side with our graphics card. We'll take a closer look at that later on. All right, so now we're ready to install the radiator of our AIO, and it's a 120 again, and this case does support two 120 radiators, one at the front here, kind of towards the bottom at the front, and then one at the very bottom. We're going to opt for the bottom today because that might give us a bit more room for GPU clearance once that's in there. So here's a look at the bottom plate, which is removable in a very easy way. You just kind of pull it and pop it off like most front panels for a traditional ATX mid-tower, and it pops off like so. It's very easy. It's just got these 4 pegs that fit into these 4 holes. 2 feet, the feet that we saw earlier, they are long feet, but they have 2 pads per foot. So here's 2 pads on one foot, here's 2 pads on the other long foot, and these are removable. I can confirm that now with the 2 screws on either end. Just go ahead and remove those and the feet come right off if you want to lay this case on its side, kind of like how it is now. There's also a removable dust filter. It's a nice little plastic filter, comes out from the side. Underneath here we see a bunch of mounting points, just tons of flexible mounting strips for 120 or 140. So we're gonna start off with our fan and radiator. We're gonna do one fan at first, and then install the GPU and see if we can get away with installing a second fan for push-pull. Priority number 1 right now is just getting at least one fan and the radiator installed. So let's go ahead and see what this is gonna look like here. Try to block it out. All right, radiator and fan installed. Pretty smooth. We've also got our fan cable here, which we can probably route through either this this generous opening right here to the right of the fan. We can't actually route it to the left of the fan simply because that's where our power supply is gonna go, which, by the way, we are blocking our friggin' power supply. Gosh darn it. Son of a bitch. So apparently I screwed up, guys. I was supposed to install the power supply before mounting the radiator in here. The order of operations in a case like this, since it's just such a unique internal layout, is all backwards. It's all upside down. So look at this. I can't fit this in here. So I messed up. I should have been reading the instructions more carefully, or even at all. The manual's like underneath that box, under the graphics card box. I haven't been looking at the instructions, so that's really my fault and not Phanteks in any way. But it goes to show that, you know, with a case like the Evolv Shift, you kind of have to forget everything you know about building PCs because it is such a unique layout, and you really have to sort of rely on the user's manual for the first go. Otherwise, you could run into some snags such as this one. So on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and uninstall this so I can install this and then reinstall that, and then we should be good to go. All right, so here we have the power supply mostly installed. It's kind of just put in place right now. It's sort of difficult to get it in here with the plugs because with the plugs installed into the unit itself, we hardly have any clearance above. This is about 130 millimeters long for a power supply, and we're just barely getting enough clearance. So it was really a tight fit. We still have to screw it in for now, but let's go ahead and finish screwing this guy in. So we've got the power supply screwed in now, and you can see here we've got a little pass-through at the bottom of the case. It's just long enough to plug into the back of the power supply. Don't forget to flip the switch so that the system boots properly when it's time to boot. And you can see the pass-through goes to the rear of the case. I think we might have spotted that earlier when we were taking a look at the exterior. So that's all pretty good. I mean, power supply is complete for the most part. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our radiator. All right, so now we're just gonna do some cable management. We've got all of our power supply cables right here at the back of the case. There is a fairly large opening, nice cutout on the back wall for routing cables to their appropriate connectors. So we're gonna start with let's do our 24 pin. Let's get the meaty guy out of the way first. Let's see how easy it is to fit him through this little routing hole. Actually, I'm gonna unplug the USB 3 header just for now to get it out of the way. And sure enough, our 24 pin seems to be getting through just fine. Go, 24 pin installed. Next up we can do our 8 pin EPS for the CPU. Voila. Now I have to bear in mind that the memory sticks still have to go in here and they have pretty tall heat spreaders. So you know what, let's install the memory right now. It's good to install the RAM, especially if you have taller heat spreaders on your modules around the same time that you're doing cable management. Because otherwise, if you install the memory well before that, it can get in the way. And if you install it too late, then the cables that you've routed will get in the way of your memory stick. So that looks pretty good for now. Not much we can do about this cable here. An issue that you might have is that the the 8-pin or any cables that are to the right of the motherboard may interfere with the front fan here because it's just, there's hardly any clearance between the fan and the motherboard, so bear that in mind. Fortunately, looks like we're getting by just fine here. All right, so now let's move on to our video card. The video card is on the completely opposite side of the case. It's got its own little chamber, so we're gonna turn this around. So here's a look at the graphics card chamber, and it's a pretty ingenious design how they've set this up. So basically, here's the ribbon style extension for your PCIe, going to a by 16 PCIe slot, which you kind of can't see right here, but it is right here. That's attached to this bracket that's sort of on rails. And you can see here it's got a flexible mounting strip, so you can mount it all the way to the right or all the way to the left, in the center, wherever you want, based on your clearance needs. The bracket itself is being held in place by 2 of these screws here, and there's one standoff on the opposite end where the cable channel is underneath the motherboard. So we'll have to get back there in just a sec to remove the bracket. The other cool thing about the bracket is that it's reversible. So it allows you to flip the card 180, whichever way you want. So right now it's configured in a way where the fans would be facing inward. And that'd probably be the best for airflow, I would imagine, but you can reverse it, as I mentioned, to have your graphics card shroud facing the tempered glass if you want to get some nicer visuals of your card, depending on, you know, what your temperature needs are, what your thermal requirements are, and just your aesthetic preferences, I suppose. So we're gonna go ahead and I think we're gonna mount it like this just for now, just so we can kind of see it through the glass. We'll see exactly how hot it gets when it's mounted with the fans facing the glass and how much clearance is left for that. So let's go ahead and remove this bracket here. This should remove just like so. Easy peasy. Now we can go ahead and flip it around since we want to do the opposite orientation here. Basically the way you do that is you take this little standoff, we have to remove that and basically place it on the opposite end. So let me go ahead and do that really quick, which you will need like a wrench to do that. All right, so now we can mount the graphics card to the bracket. Got to make sure that our little tab is downward, just like on a regular motherboard. Looks like it's in there. And we gotta put 2 screws to keep the card fixed to the bracket. All right, video card mounted to bracket. Now we can install the thing as a whole. Oh, actually, no, we can't. Houston, we have a problem. So it looks like we don't have quite enough slack on our PCIe extension cable to mount this card in this position without it running into clearance issues with our power supply. There's just too much interference. Unless we were able to move the card further to the front of the case, slide it to the left, but we can't do that because this is too short. So we're just gonna have to flip it the way it was initially intended, which is like that. So just really quick, I wanted to show you guys how we routed the PCIe cables to the graphics card. So from our power supply here, with the cables coming out this end, we sort of routed both of the PCIe connectors through the cable channel right here in the middle of the case, and then we stuck them through the bottom or the right side grommet. There's only 2 grommets there, so we stuck it through the right side grommet and then wired it directly to the graphics card. And fortunately, there was enough length on the power supply cable to actually reach. This is a very large card, and I should also mention that it barely fit inside of this case. Any longer, it would have run into clearance issues with the radiator here. We would have either had to swap it out for a different AIO entirely or pick a smaller or a shorter graphics card. So fortunately, it just barely fit, and it still looks really nice, even though we're not taking a look at the shroud itself. The back plate is pretty sexy and kind of gives it a nice blackout vibe compared to this side. All right, so at this point, since we don't have any drives other than the M.2 that's already installed, we're pretty much good to go other than cable management. So we just need to tidy up the cables that are at the back of the case, make them look nice and neat so that we can actually fit the back panel back on without too much trouble. But I'm also gonna throw in this LED strip. This is actually a Phanteks branded LED strip. It's RGB, and it is actually compatible with the RGB controller on this case, as I mentioned earlier. So we're gonna go ahead and connect it. And the only thing is that it completely lost all of the adhesive. The adhesive came off entirely, and there's no magnets, unfortunately, so I don't know exactly how we're gonna fix this to the case here, but I guess we'll have to get creative. All right, so we've got a bit of duct tape here. This probably won't hold for very long, but just for the sake of the video so I can show you guys the RGB controller later on. So here we've got our makeshift adhesive, which should temporarily hold this in place. Okay, let's see how long that holds for. And I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the cable. I've already plugged it in to our fan controller here. Last thing we have to plug in for this build is the RGB controller. We need to give it power. Just a little SATA connector. I'm really glad that it's SATA and not Molex. So +1 to you, Phanteks. Wire that guy up. And this is pretty much what we're left with. In terms of as far as our excess cabling goes, this is it. You're looking at it. It's just this, mainly the SATA cable, our USB 3, and some of the, the front panel connector stuff. But really easy. Should be really easy to tie down. Again, most of our cabling, our excess cabling, is in this cable channel here. So plenty of space, honestly, even though we didn't even utilize the drive mounts here, either the 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch drive. You can kind of see the mounting points here. Even though we didn't utilize those at all, I could imagine that you'd still have plenty of room for cabling, even if you did populate those mounts in some way. So that's cool. Got these lovely little Velcro straps. Don't want to block our power supply fan. That's a no-no. So let's kind of wire things up upwards. All right, so cable management took next to no time at all, and it looks like we've still got plenty of room to pop our rear panel back on. So let's go ahead and do that as we approach the end of this build. There's hardly any clearance between the back plate of the graphics card and the tempered glass side panel, so I'm actually kind of glad in hindsight that we are mounting the video card with the shroud facing inward. I think that'll probably be a little bit nicer on our temperatures. And now the final piece. Wait, I didn't even clean the inside of it yet. Shit! There we go. That was a little bit firm. Oh man, this is looking nice. And build complete. Let's turn it on. Ready for it? Here we go. Moment of truth.
Yay!
Whoa, my goodness, that looks amazing.
That looks really good.
Holy, I can't tell, is that blue? Is that blue or white?
I was gonna say white, but then I don't know, why does it look like there's a blue?
Well, you know what, honey? This would be a perfect opportunity to do an RGB demo with the Evolv Shift and a compatible Phanteks LED strip. What do you say? Let's do it. Let's see what happens. I believe this button cycles through 10 different colors, so that's definitely blue.
Yeah.
I think the one before was just a white with a very bluish tint. Next up, we've got
Purple.
Perps. Let me go ahead and dim the lights a little bit. And that's pink, or a fuchsia type of color. We've also got red. I think if there were different colored components, there were different colored components in here.
Rusty orange.
That looks pretty nice, actually. This is kind of like a yellowish green. And then that is green. That's like a forest green. And then that's turquoise.
Yeah.
There's our teal. So the other cool thing is that you can, I believe you can turn off the LEDs if you hold the button down.
Nope. Oh.
Yep.
There you go.
You have to hold it down for a good 5 seconds or so, but the LEDs will disable. You can go ahead and press it again to turn them on. And I believe if you do a long hold, a long press is supposed to give you different effects. So now it's actually breathing. It's doing like a breathing thing, right? Mm-hmm. Fading up and down. This just fades between all the colors of the rainbow. That's like the show floor mode. I think it's just static after that point. And of course you could just do away with the RGB button altogether if you wanted to by simply routing the LED strip to an RGB header on your motherboard should it support it. And that way you can configure all of this stuff in the software, whether it be Asus Aura or similar. Definitely a reason to pick up a Phanteks RGB strip or something like that if you want some additional bling. And here's just a quick look at the opposite side. While it's not quite as glamorous, you can see some of the EVGA logo
That's what you see.
peering through the back plate. It's very minimalistic, but it looks nice. I believe that's also customizable in the EVGA Precision X software. So you get options. You get lots of options. And of course, the RGB light at the top of the case matches the color of the RGB strip and stuff. So pretty cool. All right, guys. So there is mine, Wifey Sauce's new home theater PC. It looks fantastic. You guys let me know what you think, though, in the comments below. As far as the Evolv Shift, awesome case for $110. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but $110 MSRP at the time of launch, at the time of filming. There's Wifey Sauce on her phone. Hi, honey. But the Shift X is $50 more than that, so you can get that one for $160, I believe. And yeah, worth every penny, at least for the Shift. I have yet to even open the box for the Shift X. Let me know what you guys want to see with that case, if anything, in the comments below as well. But a very lovely case, very well thought out. Every inch of space is for the most part utilized quite well. The cable routing in this case is also just managed very smartly. The fact that you can hide all the cables underneath both the front and rear panels, and this middle channel here for routing all your cables from the power supply to whatever components that need to be routed to is very, very handy. And it looks tidy too. I mean, if you're just looking at it dead on, you can't even tell that there's just a cluster of cables behind that little magnetic door there. So very good job, Phanteks. Thank you for making another great case. But guys, let me know what you think of the Shift so far, what you think about its looks and its functionality as well. Let me know what you think, and also toss me a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Before you go, feel free to check out Bitwit Ultra, my ad-free early access channel for $1.50 a month. The first 2 weeks are completely free, and you can back out any friggin' time. As always, I'm Kyle with Bitwit. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more tech stuff if you haven't already, and I will see y'all in the next video.